No matter which high quality handheld it was, there was always one franchise that really amazes and wows me right away at what can be done on a handheld now. That franchise is Dragon Ball. These fighting games have always amazed what can be done in a portable package. On the PSP, I was blown away by the graphics and the gameplay of Dragon Ball Z, Shin Budokai, and Shin Budokai 2. On the PlayStation Vita, it was Dragon Ball Z Battle of Z. And even back on the Nintendo DS, despite its 2D nature, the Supersonic Warriors games really wowed me. It's always been that way, and it keeps going with the Switch. Over the past 10 or 11 days, I have been in a state of disbelief actually having playable, workable Dragon Ball Xenoverse gameplay on my Nintendo Switch on the go. It's just incredible. And now I'm ready to do a review of this PS4 and Xbox One quality title. Here's my review of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 for the Nintendo Switch. With there being well over 100 Dragon Ball video games in existence, developers can't just rehash the same timeline over and over and over again. Fans go into Dragon Ball Xenoverse, and if they saw the Saiyan Saga playing out exactly the way the Saiyan Saga did in the anime, I've seen this, I know this like the back of my hand, I can recite this. So Dragon Ball developers are starting to go into different ways of telling the same story, and that is with time travel. In Xenoverse 2, you don't play as Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta. You play as a customized character, a member of the Time Patrol, whose job is to travel across the timeline, find where people are changing history, and then correct it. This allows for a lot of familiar events to turn out very, very differently. In terms of gameplay, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is not something I would refer to as a fighting game. The Xenoverse games took a very MMORPG take on the Dragon Ball universe. When you're in combat, it's like a 3D fighting game. When you're outside of combat, you've got character development, customizable characters, equipment and skills, a leveling system, a stat distribution system leading to character growth. Everything outside of combat I would label as heavy RPG mechanics. So, like the Dissidia Final Fantasy PSP games, I would label the Xenoverse games as RPG fighting game hybrids. Now, before we talk into the progression and how you play the game, there are two things I want to cover that have been a big topic of debate on the Nintendo Switch subreddits. 1. The DLC. The Nintendo Switch version of Xenoverse 2 does not come packed in with the DLC. It must still be bought. Number 2. The Nintendo Switch version of the game comes packed with the entire story campaign from the first Dragon Ball Xenoverse game. However, in Japan, they noted that this would only be available for early buyers. So how long is this going to remain available? No one knows right now. It might be available for a year, or it might be available for a month. Just so you know, the longer you wait to buy the game, the less of a chance you'll get at actually receiving and being able to unlock that story content. Now, progression in the game. Once you create your custom character, you are dropped into a hub world with a lot of things to do. You can do story missions. You can do quests and battles by yourself or through the online multiplayer. You can go do side quests with mentors so they can train you to teach you new skills. You can go to various time distortions to do even more side quests through various Dragon Ball characters so you can collect key items for the true ending. There is a ton to do. Now, a lot of this side content is locked to your story progress, and that includes the Xenoverse 1 story campaign. As you progress through the Xenoverse 2 story, you will unlock side quests and new chapters for Xenoverse 1. Now, when you're in the middle of a mission, the combat and the fighting elements take over. You and your team spawn in the middle of a huge 3D arena from the Dragon Ball universe, and so do your opponents. You then can fly, run, and swim through these arenas and duke it out with these opponents, depending on what your mission objective is. And with combat, you've got a light and heavy attack combo system. You can launch off energy projectiles, you can guard, you can teleport it with your stamina, and you can use powerful super attacks that are extremely flashy and do major damage depending on how you've done your stat allocation. And you basically just go through this until your objective is complete, whether your objective is defeat an enemy, reduce an enemy's health a certain amount, defeat so many enemies, collect Dragon Balls that are scattered throughout the stage. Then you complete the mission, you're given Zenny money so you can buy new equipment, and you're given experience so you can level up and gain new stat allocation points to further develop your character. And this level up system is one of the nicest features of the game, and one of the features that can lead to a frustration. There are a lot of difficulty spikes as you go through Xenoverse 2's story missions, and by the time you get to the end, it will become very, very difficult. I barely scraped through the final battle and the epilogue of Xenoverse 2, and I was doing every single side quest that came up as it came up. If you tried to go through the game purely on story missions, you would have to stop several times just to grind up levels so you can complete this latest story mission and keep going through the plot. Even if you do what I did, you will eventually reach points where you will have to stop and grind. I didn't for Xenoverse 2 story missions, but I did for the Xenoverse 1 story missions and the Universe 6 Tournament DLC. It is a very difficult game at the end, and you will need to be at or over the initial level cap of level 80 to clear everything the game has to offer. Now, with everything I've told you that you can do in the game, you can imagine, oh, this is going to be a long fighting game, and it is. By the time I cleared both story campaigns and began working on the DLC campaigns that I bought, I had logged around 60 hours in the game. Now, let's talk about presentation. As far as the graphics go, we aren't super on par with the PS4 and Xbox One versions, but we are close. When the camera is close to the character models, they look nearly flawless, and you get some jagged edges the farther away they are from the camera. The good thing about this is that performance is pretty much flawless. When you're in the hub or on story missions, you are running a solid 30 frames per second, and when you do one-on-one battles, it jumps up to a solid 60 frames per second. Not that I haven't seen the frame rate twitch. When you're in menus, and when you're loading the hub world, I have seen it hesitate for a moment, but I have never seen it drop during missions where it counts. It is a very well optimized port of the game. The only thing I don't like about presentation is something that is the same across the Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 versions of the game. If you look at the story scenes, you will notice that there is a huge audio sync issue. A lot of times the characters will start moving their mouths a good 2 seconds before the English dub actually states their lines. I had to research this to make sure this wasn't only on the Switch. If you look up PS4 cutscenes on YouTube, it'll be the same there. And this is only a problem because if you look at the Xenoverse 1 story missions, there isn't an audio sync problem. Now, I'm not saying this is a huge problem. It's more of an annoyance, which is why I will only be taking half a point off the game's score for this. But it's still there, and it's still bothersome. Finally, let's talk about battery life. Given how graphic heavy and online heavy Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is, I was expecting very, very, very short battery life. And it is relatively short, but not nearly as bad as I was expecting it to be. Here are my times from 100% to 0%. With the maximum brightness and the Wi-Fi turned on, you got 2 hours and 26 minutes. With the maximum brightness and the Wi-Fi off, 2 hours and 33 minutes. Lowest brightness with the Wi-Fi on, 3 hours and 8 minutes. And with lowest brightness with the Wi-Fi off, 3 hours and 22 minutes. Now this isn't super great. It's more than Zelda gets, but it's less than a lot of other games get. Still, given the graphical quality of the game, 2.5 hours to 3.5 hours I'm pretty happy with it. I was expecting it to be a lot less. In conclusion, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 makes an exceptional transition over to the handheld world. It is a little grindy at times, and the audio sync issue from the other consoles still hasn't been fixed. But with fast-paced combat, extensive character customization, and the fact that early buyers essentially get both Xenoverse games in one, it's a great buy if you're a Dragon Ball fan that wants Xenoverse on the go. Reviews to Go rates Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below, or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com. As always, thank you for the watch, guys. Now, if you're also into non-gaming, horror-based channels, you can check out one of my followers' channels who does creepypasta videos, which I will link in the description below. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.